All right, T.O., you're starting off with this one. It's a little bit of it's a doozy. All right, UCLA was a bubble team that couldn't guard prior to the NCAA tournament in 2021. On the day the NCAA tournament started, they were ranked 42nd on KenPom. They are essentially running it back this year with a freshman in Peyton Watson in place of an all-league win in Chris Smith. Why are we trusting them with a top 10 ranking heading into the season? Go ahead.
Or why are we not trusting them? I think you're trusting them. I'm a little nervous about UCLA, and I'll tell you why. They lost 4 out of their last 5 whenever they were going into the tournament. And this is a team that, because of the pace they play, they were dead last in the Pac-12 in pace. They were 341st, according to KenPom, out of 357 teams. That leaves you vulnerable, especially in the tournament when you're playing some of these smaller mid-major teams that are just going to hoist it from 3. Look at what happened to Virginia when they were ranked. Now, they came back and won the national championship, but that's beside the point. My point is they are susceptible. Do they have length on the perimeter? Sure. Do they have Miles Johnson coming in to give them some rim protection? Absolutely. And Peyton Watson is a stud All-American who's put on 17 pounds since arriving on campus in Westwood. I like this UCLA team, but there are holes there that could be taken advantage of, especially when it comes to pace.
I like this UCLA team. I do not love this UCLA team as much as the nation.
Yeah, you're so good, Fanta. You fire me up. Are you kidding me? Keep going.
I would go on a date with them. I don't know if I want to stand at the altar and wait for them in New Orleans. Okay? So I think that Miles Johnson was a great addition because he was kind of the head of the snake defensively and of the front court for a Rutgers team that was seconds away, a possession away for making the second weekend of the NCAA tournament. Great ad. Johnny Juzang, Jaime Jaquez are 2 terrific players. But you mentioned it. When you play that slow of a style, you are susceptible. If you fall into a rut offensively, you are susceptible to losing to teams that you probably shouldn't lose to based on if we're just judging on paper talent. Mick Cronin is a really good coach that develops an identity, a DNA of what he wants. I thought that DNA worked perfectly in the NCAA tournament last season. But just as that NCAA tournament run, if the DNA worked perfectly there, it could also flip like when Cincinnati lost a couple years ago to Nevada in the first weekend of the tournament where Nevada had quite a bit of talent, but Cincinnati's style did not match up quite well in that matchup. I think that UCLA has really, really good talent, but the NCAA tournament, if we're going to say that there's a randomness to it, and that's why the Big Ten failed last year in the NCAA tournament, we have to also say that there's a randomness to the NCAA tournament in that UCLA went from first 4 to Final 4. Do I think that UCLA is just a shoo-in to make the Elite 8 and could make the Final 4 again? I feel like a lot of people just are saying UCLA should be in the second weekend, no doubt, should be contending for a Final 4. This sport is not that easy. Now UCLA has an absolute target on their back that they have not had before in a Pac-12 that seems to be better. So I like UCLA. Do I think that they are number 1 or number 2 in college basketball? Based on past, maybe, but I'm not buying that to that degree. I have a trust level for some teams we're going to talk about a little bit more.
I buy into them and I trust them. And part of the reason is the guy that you just mentioned, Miles Johnson. I think that the biggest issue that UCLA had throughout last season was they played at such a slow tempo and they couldn't get stops. In the tournament, they started getting stops. And that reduces, you mentioned the variance, Theo. That reduces the variance and you're actually able to get stops against teams. You don't just have to outscore them, right? I think Miles Johnson is a significant difference maker there. They didn't have anyone like that, right? Once they lost, I'm blanking on the kids, Jalen Hill. Once they lost Jalen Hill, they kind of lost any semblance of rim protection. Cody Riley, as effective as he was, he's not out there because of his defense. He's out there because of the ability that he has to kind of make things happen in the post. And, he's a 6'7" 5-man. That's what he was last year. Miles Johnson's a lot bigger than 6'7". I also think it's important to note that while they're basically replacing Chris Smith with Peyton Watson, Chris Smith wasn't there after the first 8 games of the season because he tore his ACL. Peyton Watson, I think, is a very, very good defensive wing. And now all of a sudden you have Johnny Juzang and you have Jaime Jaquez and you have Peyton Watson that can kind of play that switchable 2 through 4 roles. They can all guard anyone in that spot. You have experience of Tiger Campbell. I don't think that I would necessarily lock them into making a Final Four just because I don't think that anybody is going to be head and shoulders above the rest of the country. But
There's
I have
so
a
much
ton of
parity.
faith in them being able to find a way to make it work. There it is.
Hey, and Tiger Campbell, last point, Tiger Campbell, he does a nice job of jamming the ball too. So like some of those pitch aheads that when UMBC beat Virginia, it's not going to be as easy. So to kind of play devil's advocate to my own point.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they could still do it. I mean,
of course they could.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep. All right. So T.O., I'm going to you first on this one.